Hello everybody, welcome. I am sitting here with Dr. Deb Matthews with Signature Wellness. Hello. She is an integrative medical doctor and she's a former pediatrician, which is interesting. I want to hear the story of how you started. You started as a pediatrician, but then you got into functional medicine, integrative medicine. Tell us about that transition.
Yeah, so in my own personal life, I was exhausted all the time. And I was cold all the time. I took a sweater everywhere I went, even in July, because when I would go into the movie theaters and the restaurants, I would just shiver and I would just freeze. Yeah. My favorite pastime was napping. I needed 10 hours of sleep to function like a normal human, and I had no patience with my kids. I have 4 boys, and I spent so much of my time screaming at them, and then feeling so guilty for being such a horrible mom. And the really confusing thing is that nothing in my medical training helped me understand what was happening to me. And I just thought that I was a cold-natured person who needed way more sleep than everybody else. And the reality is that I had a thyroid problem. And I knew that. I was on thyroid hormone replacement medicine, but my labs were normal. And that's what we were trained to do, is to take the thyroid medicine until your labs are normal, and then we're done. And if you still are tired or you can't lose weight or you don't feel good, then maybe you need to get up off the couch and go exercise, or maybe you need an antidepressant. But the reality is the medicine wasn't working for me. And my quest to resolve my own issues led me to understand that there's a whole different way of practicing medicine. And the turning point for me actually is I read a book written by Suzanne Somers about women's hormones.
I read that book a couple years ago. Yes,
and
like
she's written lots of them now.
Yes.
But this book just allowed me to open my mind and see that there's a whole other approach where we want to look at the root cause of why you're not feeling good instead of just putting band-aids on your symptoms with all these different prescription drugs. And so I was able to resolve my own issues. I got my energy back, my kids got their mom back, my husband got his wife back, and I got my life back, but I just couldn't go back to doing it the old way.
Wow.
So now for 13 years, I've been helping men and women resolve the root cause of their health issues so they can get well, get off prescription drugs, and love the way they feel.
Yes, I love this because you guys know that I'm all about getting to the root cause. You know, before we go and start taking prescription medication, I want all you guys to be sure that for at least 12 weeks you have applied yourself to a healthy lifestyle, meaning eating real foods in raw form, sleeping regularly, exercising regularly, and if you still have the issues, then we consult an integrative medical doctor, you know, and see what we can do from there versus taking prescription drugs. Because as Dr. Deb and I were talking initially, we talked about how the prescription drugs, they'll help
some of the symptoms,
yes,
and they can help, but they're not really fixing the underlying problem.
Yes, and they're causing damage in other ways, right? You can't just take something and think that it's just doing one thing, fixing that one thing in your body, your thyroid, for example. It's going to have maybe an equal and opposite negative impact on your body as well.
When women have hormonal issues, mood problems are super common. And if you go into your doctor and you complain you're anxious or you're depressed or you're unmotivated, whatever the problem is, you tend to walk out the door with an antidepressant. But antidepressants have side effects like weight gain, and they kill off your sex drive.
Low libido, yes.
And so now you've got a different set of problems to deal with. And there are other ways that can sometimes really help women and men.
Wonderful. Tell us a little, let's start getting into hormones. So what is the normal healthy age that women, and I know men go through these hormonal transitions too, so I hope you guys are watching, not just to help your ladies, but to gather information on yourself as well. But what's about the typical age that women will start going through menopause?
Some women can start to have some hormonal shifts starting after 35. So even in your late 30s, things can start to shift a little bit. It is common when you're in your 40s that things are going to be changing, and then the average age of actually hitting menopause is age 51. But anywhere between 45 and 55 would be considered normal. And when we say the word menopause, what we mean is that it's been one whole year without a period. And so it's just one moment in time, but the transition can take years. So just like puberty is a transition that takes years, so menopause is a transition, and sometimes that transition can go on for many, many years. And if you're not sure what you're feeling and you don't understand what's happening, there can be a lot of suffering in this time too.
Sure. And we also tapped on you know, when it comes to symptoms of menopause, obviously skipping a period is one of the signs that we're going through it. But are there other signs that our body will give us to let us know?
Yeah. So the first thing that tends to happen when we're starting into this transition is that progesterone levels drop. That one goes down long before your estrogen level drops. And if progesterone starts to drop, we call that estrogen dominance, meaning you still have your estrogen, but not enough progesterone to balance things out. And some of the symptoms that women tend to experience kind of early on in the process is not sleeping soundly at night, because progesterone helps you to get that good quality sleep so you wake up refreshed.
I remember this feeling when I was pregnant each time, and I want it back. I don't want to be pregnant for the rest of my life, but that calm, that ease, you know, when I was pregnant. Yeah. Okay. So I see how progesterone does that.
Pro-gestational, helps to support a pregnancy. So you get tons of progesterone while you're pregnant.
While I'm pregnant,
So because it's calming, you also, when you lose it, tend to feel more anxious, and you feel more easily frustrated, impatient, negative, critical. Little things just drive you nuts. And sometimes you can find yourself feeling like this, even if you know your kids or your husband or whoever, whatever they did wasn't really that bad, but you can't help feeling like this. You can't stop yourself from spitting that word out that you know you probably shouldn't have said.
Yeah.
So we tend to not feel quite as nice sometimes when we lose our progesterone. And then progesterone has a lot to do with your menstrual cycle. And when progesterone goes down, PMS symptoms can get worse. So, you know, it's not abnormal to have, you know, a day or two when you don't feel your best before your period. But at this point now, PMS symptoms can be much more severe. So the breast tenderness, the fluid retention, the bloating can last longer. So instead of 1 or 2 days, can be a week, can even be up to 2 weeks.
Where the breasts are tender and
and your mood is bad and you lose your motivation and you don't feel like exercising and you don't want to eat your broccoli, you just want to eat the darn ice cream.
Wow. And so this is not just like when we're PMSing, we're used to having this for like a couple days, but when we're transitioning into menopause.
For some women, it's not a couple of days. It can be half the month.
Yes. And you know, something else, guys, that we tapped on that I feel is such good information for us to store with us. We were comparing, or I was asking Dr. Deb if I could use the symptoms that I experienced before in my life. I'm 36 now, so I brought up when I was going through puberty, and then when I was first pregnant in that first 3 months, I was saying I noticed that I had a lot of the same symptoms during those periods of time, or even just the week PMS right before my period. They're the same. And Dr. Deb, tell me how you respond. And I was saying, can I use those symptoms as cues to myself that I'm going through a hormonal change?
Yeah, so this is not an exact science, and what I'm saying is just based on my experience from talking to, you know, hundreds and hundreds of women. But oftentimes, if you were somebody who just, you know, through puberty it was really easy for you and you've had easy periods for your whole life, you have a pretty good chance of going through this menopausal transition without too much problem. But if you're the person who had horrible periods, you had terrible cramps, you had to miss school, you had heavy bleeding, it was kind of miserable for you, it does tend to get better when you're, you know, in your 20s and in your 30s. It does tend to calm down for a lot of women. But then you're one of the women who's more likely to have more problems again as you're transitioning through this perimenopausal phase. And it can be the same kinds of things: more bleeding, heavier periods, longer lasting periods, more PMS. So it doesn't have to be that way, and there are things that we're going to talk about for what you can do to minimize the chance of that. But if you had horrible periods before, chances are that you may have horrible periods again.
It's the same body. It's the same chemistry.
Yeah. Changes
are happening. Aging has happened, continually happening. But we can rely on that former information for us to be more wise during this period of our time when things are changing, and go and get the help. Okay. Now, what do you recommend? Tell me, for us when we're going through, when we're transitioning.
Yeah.
What can we do to make ourselves more comfortable?
Sure. So there are, I would say, 4 things that either make this process better, make your hormone balance better, or worse. And those are what you're eating, what kind of stress you're under, your physical activity level, and toxins in the environment.
One more time. What you're eating.
What you're eating, your stress level, your physical activity, and toxins in the environment that you're exposed to.
Okay.
And those are all things, you can't control your genes, but these are all things that you do have some power over, and you have some things that you can do in order to make things better. So I know that we're going to talk, I think, a little bit more about food,
Yes.
but just as a general principle, a healthy whole food diet is really important. So the foods that make this worse are sugar and processed foods that are full of chemicals and preservatives and artificial sweeteners and food coloring, things that don't really have a lot of nutrients in them. You know, they're high in calories but low in nutrition.
Right.
Eating those kinds of foods, you don't get the nutrients that your body needs to make the hormones and for your metabolism to go and for your brain to have energy, and so it's going to make it worse. But if you're eating fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, if you're choosing healthy sources of animal protein, so like grass-finished beef or organic eggs, or and not pepperoni and the bologna and hot dogs, those kinds of things really make a difference. So whole foods, the kind of form that they're found in nature,
Yes.
so not the packaged ones with the list of all those ingredients that you can't pronounce, makes a really big difference, and that's the first place that we start.
Preach. Yes, amen. Just primal, primitive way of eating, the way that we've been eating, the food that comes from the ground, that's what we're supposed to be eating. And, this goes along with the fact that the medicine that we should be taking too also comes from the ground. Is not synthetically made, is not man-made. The food, the medicine, everything that we need, God has given us through this earth. All right, so food.
Yeah, so food. So that's really important, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more
Yes.
about that. But the next one is stress, and this is humongous.
Yes.
So we all have lots of stress in our lives. And, sometimes you can't really control if, you lose your job or your husband leaves you, or your kid gets
Sure.
sick, right? We can't control
Yes.
our lives all the time. The one thing that we can control is how we allow the stress to affect us. And so it really matters how you allow it to affect you. So what you think about, because you do have control, at least some control over what you think about. And if you catch yourself thinking negative thoughts or ruminating over, the same negative ideas or, that same conversation, oh my gosh, I can't believe she said that to me. It just takes that bad situation and it makes it a lot worse. And if you're somebody who can be more accepting, be hopeful, see the positives, be that glass half full person, you can take that same stressful situation and you can really minimize the negative impact that the stress has on your physical body. So breathing exercises, meditation, yoga, stretching, exercise, laughter, prayer, being outside in nature. There's all kinds of things that we can do that are in our power that protect us from the harmful effects of stress, even if we can't protect, we can't stop all the stresses in our lives. And the connection here is that when you are stressed, cortisol goes up. That's your stress hormone. And that's really important because it helps you cope with stress. But the problem is, if you're under chronic stress and cortisol is chronically elevated, it causes you to gain weight, especially around your belly.
Yeah.
It affects your mood, your energy, your sleep, and cortisol regulates all your other hormones. And so it knocks your other hormones out of whack. So if you are, say, 32, and you're having some of these symptoms we talked about, like waking up with night sweats or not sleeping through the night or having more anxiety, and you're saying to yourself, gosh, I sound like I'm going through this perimenopausal process. Well, it's much more likely that chronic stress is messing up your cortisol, and progesterone is the hormone that our body uses to make cortisol. And so if your body is robbing all that progesterone that your ovaries make, flipping it over to cortisol to help you survive today, then you don't have enough progesterone and it feels like you're going through perimenopause. But the fix, the solution is deal with stress, get your cortisol back online, then progesterone will stay progesterone and menstrual symptoms get better.
Love. Remember, another physical symptom of high cortisol is the fat we gained around your abdomen. I like this because it's everyone knows, they can just say, I know so many of you guys are unsure if you're stressed, which I kind of laugh when I say that, because you think it'd be obvious, but when you're in your body and when you're in your life, you're unsure. So just to fit, yes, we are storing fat around the abdomen when cortisol is hyperactive and you're in fight and flight too often.
Yeah. And the thing is, we're used to it. It just seems
Yes.
normal. And
Yes.
what doesn't seem normal are all the things that we could be doing to reduce our stress. So in other cultures, yes, Tai Chi in China and yoga in India,
or just naps in the middle of the day in Italy.
But here, especially if you are, like for example, a busy working mom, if you take time out of your day to sit and meditate, you feel guilty, right? You feel like you really ought to be folding the laundry, the dishwasher needs to be unloaded, you should be making crafts for your kids.
Because culturally, it's not acceptable, because the girl next door is busy, busy, busy.
Yeah. Okay. We just don't value
Makes
it
sense.
anymore. But it's really, really important. Stress is a huge cause of hormone problems for women and for men.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Third one is your level of physical activity. So if we go back to stress, when we're stressed, we've got all these stress hormones percolating in our body. Well, a great way to burn off your stress hormones is physical activity, is exercise. Exercise is a great way to bring your hormones back into balance. It's like nature's safety valve.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be like super strenuous exercise. It doesn't have to be like running a marathon or super high intensity boot camp. Sometimes those things are stresses instead of stress relief. But it's that regular exercise that is strengthening your body. It makes a ton of difference for your hormones and for so many other things about your health. And it makes you feel good about yourself, which helps balance your hormones too.
Yeah, change your physiology and change your mind.
Absolutely.
Like move your body and it changes the way that you feel.
Our bodies were meant to move.
Yeah.
And our modern life, when we're sitting in front of the computer, we're sitting behind the wheel of a car, that's not how we were meant to be. And so, moving your body really, really matters. The fourth one is toxins in the environment.
Sure.
So this is one of the ways that our generation is so different than our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, because they didn't live in a time that had so many chemicals. It's really after World War II when all these chemicals have come into the environment, plastics, etc. So all of us are exposed every day to thousands of chemicals that are man-made, never before found on planet Earth, not supposed to be in our bodies. Most of them were never tested to see how they affect us, because they're not really supposed to be in our body, but they get in anyway.
Sure.
So chemicals in plastics, in our skincare products, in our food, like pesticide residues that are in our food and additives, all of these things affect us. Many of them are hormone disruptors. So a couple of key ones, because this sounds like doom and gloom, right? But let's give some tips for what you can do to prevent
sure, because it does sound unavoidable.
Right,
Sure.
and it sounds overwhelming and exhausting to the point where you feel like there's no point in even trying.
Right.
But so here's a couple of things. One is phthalates, which is a big old long word that's got a bunch of THs and P starts with a P. But phthalates are chemicals that are put in plastic to make it softer. So a couple of examples that we see all the time is the plastic wrap, like you use in your kitchen, and those plastic throwaway water bottles.
Okay.
If they are heated and cooled, it leaches the phthalates out more.
Okay.
So don't freeze your water bottles, don't run them through the dishwasher, and don't put plastic wrap over the food in the microwave. In fact, don't microwave your food in plastic at all.
Okay, phthalates, but BPA free.
BPA.
Is this not the same as
harder? It's in harder, like reusable plastic water bottles and those kinds of plastics. So BPA is another one that's a hormone disruptor, so we want to avoid it. But the problem is the manufacturers are taking the BPA out, so it'll say BPA free, but they're putting in different BPAs.
I figured,
and so we can't.
It's always the way it works, guys.
So try to avoid
plastic. Yeah. So she's just saying, just avoid plastic. And the government, our businesses, money is behind a lot of these things. They're going to take away what science is uncovering is unsafe. But again, just like Dr. Deb is teaching us, they're putting in other harmful substances
that just haven't been tested yet.
Right, because there's always going to be one to make their product sustainable. We're talking about plastic here. So just avoid plastic altogether is what she's saying. So glass, metal,
stainless steel. Yeah, those are better options.
Okay.
And then another one is in our personal care products, so your cosmetics, your shampoo, your lotions, your soaps, a lot of them have parabens. And you can read on the label, it'll say, there's all different ones, methyl parabens, propyl parabens, etc. If it has the word parabens, just ditch it and find one that's paraben free. There's lots of things out there now that you can find that say right on the label paraben free. And that's another way to help avoid, that's an important chemical that can be a hormone disruptor.
Okay, thank you so much. So the toxicity of our environment, molds, like within the air.
Toxins in the air that are in your home. I would say the biggest one, which we started off with number one, is our food.
Sure.
The biggest source of toxins is your food. So if you start with clean eating and whole food, that goes a long way.
Organic is very important.
Because Suzanne Summers, actually, I heard her give a lecture, and this is how she said it, and it really stuck with me, and it really resonated with me, is if you were at the grocery store and there were 2 bins of apples, and this apple said, $2 a pound, and this bin said $1.50 a pound sprayed with poison, would you save the 50 cents and feed your family the one that was sprayed with poison?
It's just far more accurate.
Yeah.
It's far more accurate, you guys, yes. I'm just seeing where your food's coming from. I was at Earth Fair last night picking up berries, and I almost got the blackberries, but they're a product of Mexico. And I grabbed for the raspberries because they were organic and a product of the United States, which we regulate far better. So it's keep it organic. If you can do local farms, it's not just about, I won't go off onto my rant about farms, local farms and supporting them,
great.
Because they get shut down by mass production, Walmart and all these things. I won't go into that. But the fact of the matter is their foods are a lot of the time cleaner. So, knowing where your food's coming from, growing it in your own backyard when you can is a fantastic idea. All right.
And maybe if we could just say one more thing, is we just gave a lot of tips, right? And it can be very overwhelming.
It is.
And if you're doing this much and you see that you ought to be doing that much, it feels like a lot.
Yes.
But my best advice would be to just make some changes. Just take a few things, start somewhere, because every little bit counts. And nobody is perfect, right? I'm not perfect. I bet you're probably not perfect. But
we're striving.
But we're striving.
Yes.
Just strive.
Yes, and doing one thing, and you've been in it for like 12 years, right?
Yeah.
Like on this road. I'm actually 12 years into, it's oddly enough. And so after time, we've been able to land a lot of these things, and we had started with one at first. For me, it was exercise and then nutrition. All right, we're gonna do a couple more questions. Help out my girls who are suffering from PCOS, who cannot lose fat weight. Why can't they? Why are they struggling? Because I know that they can. And what can we do to move that body into a state of fat burning?
Yeah. So PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome, is a condition where there are hormone imbalances. That's the problem, is there are hormone imbalances. And the 3 big problems is number 1, that the ovaries are making too much testosterone, which is a male hormone. The second problem is that the body is making too much insulin, which is a fat-storing hormone. Mm-hmm. And the third is that the ovaries aren't ovulating regularly. And when you have too much testosterone, it makes it so that you don't ovulate regularly. When you have too much insulin, it makes it so that you make more testosterone. So you just get caught in this cycle of hormonal dysregulation, and you tend to have irregular periods because you're not ovulating regularly. You tend to gain weight because you've got this extra insulin going on in your body.
Right.
And you can tend to have things like oilier hair, pimples, hair growing in the places where you don't want it because of the excess amount of testosterone, and even hair loss on the scalp. And this can start right from the time you're in puberty. So some teenagers already start with the acne and the hair growth. But then just because you turn, 20 and you're out of your teens, the acne doesn't necessarily go away. So this is a real problem, and many, many women with PCOS struggle with their weight. But before we go to how we're going to help those women, let's just say that not all women with PCOS do have a weight problem. And that can be really confusing, and they often don't get properly diagnosed, because if you don't have a weight problem, your doctor may not really think about it. And if you're not ovulating regularly, fertility can be an issue. So oftentimes women don't get diagnosed until they're ready to start their family and start to have a problem. So not everybody does, but it is really common. About 70% of women with PCOS do struggle with their weight.
Interesting, okay.
Okay, so the problem is this insulin resistance. So your cells aren't using insulin properly, so insulin has to regulate your blood sugar. You make more and more and more insulin to get your blood sugar down into the normal range, but the problem is all this insulin tells your cells to store fat. Mm-hmm. And here you are, you're walking around the block and you're chewing on your celery sticks, you're doing everything in your power to try to lose weight. And you do it with your girlfriend and she drops 10 pounds in 2 weeks, and you're staring at the scale and it hasn't budged, which is so frustrating.
Right.
But it is not impossible. So the one thing that really is in your power is all those 4 things that we just said, is your lifestyle habits.
Okay.
If you can eat clean foods, cut out the sugar, also reduce the starchy carbohydrates, because
Yes.
it's the sugar and the starchy carbohydrates that tend to drive the insulin problem. So a lower glycemic index diet, meaning less of the starchy carbs. If you're eating lots of the green vegetables, it gives your body the nutrients it needs to make the right hormones. If you're physically active, that's really, really helpful for insulin.
Yes.
So when you exercise, it makes your cells more sensitive to the insulin. It works better, and so you don't need as much. And how I describe it to people is, it's just like your computer. You know, if you don't touch it for a while, it goes into sleep mode. So when you have PCOS, it's like your cells are in sleep mode. They're not using insulin. When you exercise, it's like you turned on your computer. Now they use insulin better, but it lasts for only about 48 hours, and then it goes back to sleep. So you need to be exercising regularly in order to keep it up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so go back to those same rules of thumb, girls, and then your body might give you what you want, or you'll have a better chance of it. Now, also, I love, and I want to hear your opinion on this, the intermittent fast for my girls with PCOS, although they struggle because of their hormonal imbalances. I believe it makes it more comfortable for them, but I'm just relating back to insulin resistance, because when you have PCOS, you are more prone to insulin resistance. That's what Dr. Deb is explaining. And the intermittent fast is a great way for the body to get the break that it needs, you know, to chill out and reorganize itself. So that once you break your fast, you are able to digest foods in an effective way, in a natural way. So what do you think about intermittent fast for?
I really do recommend it. So this insulin resistance is like pre-diabetes, right? So we want to think about it the same way we would talk to somebody who actually has full-blown diabetes. And what happens when you've got all this insulin is you can't burn fat for fuel. The insulin is locking the fat in your cell. So you're constantly reliant on eating more carbohydrates in order to have fuel. When you do intermittent fasting, you don't have a steady source of carbohydrates for 12 or 16 hours overnight, right? You're eating within, say, an 8-hour window, you're fasting overnight. And during that fast, your cells start to switch over into the fat burning mode. And so you start to get better and better at unlocking the stored fat to use for fuel. So you're training your body to be better at fat burning. So it's been shown in medical science to be really helpful for people with diabetes. And so for women with PCOS, it just makes sense. And women really do report that it helps them. And so I strongly recommend it, to give it a try. And if you're worried about it, or if you find it hard, just start with a 12-hour fast. It's not really that hard, right? Eat your breakfast, say, by 7 in the morning, finish your supper by 7, don't snack at night, easy peasy.
Yes, in my program, Unbreakable Core Plus, I offer both, a standard diet and an intermittent fasting one, because I know with some previous eating disorders for women, the intermittent fasting can feel that restriction again, and then that rebellious nature coming about again. But just like Dr. Deb is saying, I say, don't worry, do the standard diet. It's just as effective. I know just through my studying and through my experience in training hundreds of women, that fast period of time, like 12 hours, because that's exactly what the standard diet is, it has a similar impact on the body. However, 16 hours is what you want to go for. All right, so let's see. I'll do one more question. I want to give us a supplement, because you do recommend, that you recommend, or they could be many that you recommend for helping us balance our hormones throughout life, right? Because we want to do, even if we don't have hormonal balance problems, like right now in my life, I don't have problems balancing my hormones. I still want to do things to put my body in a place where it's keep it where it's at, right? Not just be like, I'm good, and keep on rolling. Okay, so maybe I need to be taking supplements too, or do you think or do you think that just when you're having these issues that you introduce certain supplements?
Yeah, I wouldn't wait till you have an issue. That's sort of my whole philosophy is don't wait till something goes wrong. Keep yourself well. And my approach, how I deal with it in my patients when they come to see me, is we test. So we want to know, what is your omega-3 level inside your cells? And if it's not so great, then we would recommend a fish oil supplement until we get your level to where it needs to be. Same thing with vitamin D, if your vitamin D is low. So if you don't have access to an integrative doctor, a functional medicine doctor who can do those kinds of tests for you to be preventive, then usually your regular doctor would still get do your vitamin D level for you, because you want to know what your vitamin D level is. Mm-hmm. If you have no idea, you're not able to get the tests done, though, I still do recommend a vitamin D supplement, because most people are low in vitamin D.
Yeah.
And generally we recommend 1,000 or 2,000 international units a day, assuming that you don't know. That's not a lot. That's not enough for a lot of people, but that would be a safe amount if we don't know any different. And the same thing, if you don't have a way to get your omega-3 level tested, still taking a fish oil supplement is something that I typically recommend, because fish oil is very anti-inflammatory. It's great for balancing out your hormones. It's cancer preventive. It's got so many different functions in the body. And then one that is specific for women who have these kinds of hormonal issues where they've got menstrual problems and lots of PMS and struggling with their weight, etc., is something called DIM, or diindolmethanol, DIM, and it's from broccoli. So we know that broccoli is breast cancer preventive, it's colon cancer preventive, it does lots of good things. So this is like extract of broccoli. It's the part of the broccoli that's very helpful for balancing hormones.
All right.
And you can get it at health food stores and places like that. But that would be something to think about for women who are having some of these menstrual problems to try to get better.
Great, thank you. I wasn't aware of that supplement. All right. Anything else that you want to interject or throw out there?
So what I want to say is that menopause is optional, but no, I said that wrong. Sorry, menopause is mandatory.
I know what she's.
but suffering is optional, and that's a quote from my colleague, Dr. Anna Kebeka. So all women are going to go through hormonal changes. Some women are going to have a bumpier ride than others, but it is not mandatory to suffer. Yeah. Replacing natural progesterone when you're in the perimenopausal phase can make an enormous difference. Women shouldn't be afraid of hormone replacement therapy when done properly, if that's something that they need.
Okay.
But it's important to work with a doctor who's really looking at the whole picture and your whole body, not just writing you a prescription.
Yes, so important. All right. Thank you so much for this, and thank you for doing what you do and stepping outside the box of just traditional medicine. And joining us in this, I feel, more grounded approach to wellness for all of us. We really need leaders like you who can advise us and take the blood work, consider the whole situation, like she's saying, not just come in and I tell you my symptoms and then you write me a prescription. It's actually just not safe, you know. And so if you can get with a doctor like Dr. Deb, it's a far better, wholesome way, holistic way to approach your well-being. So thank you so much, Dr. Deb.
Thank you for having me, because I do think this is an important message for people to hear.
Yes, I do too. Thank you. All right, guys, that's it for today. And thank you, Dr. Deb. And maybe we'll see her again soon. Bye-bye.